Okay, anyone else want to join? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One or two more people? Yes, no? Last 10 seconds. Okay, here we go. Is the following valid JSON? Well, first of all, good to see that all of you either choose true or false and none of the other other ones, because those other ones don't make sense. Remember, JSON data cannot have methods. So when you saw the greet function there, that's not JSON data, right? Only JavaScript objects can have methods. But JSON itself, which is just a big string that is sent through the wire, that doesn't have any methods on it. Cool. Nice. Who's S2H22? Nice, Ihi. Who's Voldemort? Nice. John. Given the object person, the stringification of it can be done with yeah. So JSON.stringify of that object, right? So if you have a const person object, so const person equals squiggly bracket and all that stuff. If you said JSON.stringify person, it'll turn that whole object into a big long string for you. Okay. And then to do the opposite would be JSON.parse. Okay. So the stringification is the stringify. I thought it would be an obvious giveaway if I use the word stringification. Apparently not. So okay, good. Who's the emoji? Nice. Who's Apple Dance? Nice. Into deep. All right. You get this following error. What's the solution? Nice. Wow. I really hit home on that one. You guys paid attention on that one. All right. That's good. Unless the other answers are just so obviously nonsensical. Good stuff. All right. Good stuff. Question 4. Yeah, you know, it is. I'm really impressed. So that's good, because I know one of you showed me why your code didn't work and because you spelled it wrong. So that's why I chose this question. And also, I wanted to bring this question up because I wanted to point out to you that Navigator has a bunch of other features. So if you Google MDM Navigator, not only can it give you geolocation, it can give you stuff like, let's see here, your battery. There's the geolocation, which you already know. What else? Language. What is this? Max touch points. Service worker. This is huge now in JavaScript world, service workers, which allows you to make progressive web apps or PWAs. So that's cool. And the last question. Yeah. Yeah, so it was this one here. This is a JavaScript command. PHP is not going to recognize this one here. Yeah, so it's this one here. Just to show you that, again, JSON can be used within multiple platforms, multiple languages. All right, so the winners. Connor, Emoji, who's Emoji again? Right, Tyler, and Voldemort. Is that Interdeep? Voldemort? Oh, John, Voldemort. All right, so come and grab your sticker, and we'll start. All right, I think this is working. All right. Just a couple of quick announcements, or FYI, some trivia. Not trivia, but just good to know. So, with the last lab where you did Pac-Man, you may be interested to know that there are some platforms out there that allow you to make games. So I'm going to show you 3 so that you can research on your own time that you may be interested in if you want to make games. The first one, which is purely inside the web environment of HTML and JavaScript and CSS, is this one called Phaser. So phaser.io, you may want to check that out on your own time to develop games. It kind of looks like this. You can develop games that look like that. It's kind of like simple. Again, just uses web technologies like HTML, JavaScript, CSS kind of thing. But the 2 big ones that make the more popular games are, and you've probably heard of this, Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine makes these kinds of games, which is very impressive. The other one is Unity. I have not experienced any of these. I'm just pointing it out there in case you want to go in that direction. Also, I want to point out one Lab 9 in particular. So this person not only changed the rotation of Pac-Man, but also provided the Pac-Man food, where if I go get that pellet, it displays the score and all that. Yeah. So, and not only that, if I just let it go, it goes exactly to the other side where normally it would go. Anyone care to guess who did this? Well, you'll have to ask him. It's Ace. Stuff Ace. All right. Let's see here. Oh yeah, last week also I want to show you. I tried to log into MLab, and I couldn't because I forgot my password. I think I remember my password. Hopefully. I want to show you what it looks like for a database to collect JSON data. So here I have some tables, or collections it's called. There it is. That's what it looks like in this database. It just looks like. Now you're given, this is an automated property ID, so this is given. I have no control over this, but everything else I can control. That's what it looks like using MLab, which you will be using most likely in your next JavaScript course when you're dealing with Node. Another thing that you should know about is, show of hands, who has heard about this website? niuse.com. This is a very important website for web developers. So basically you're asking, can all the browsers support this new ES6 feature? So I'm going to type in the fetch command in here. It'll give me a table of all the browsers in the world that support fetch. So you can see the green areas, Edge, Firefox, Chrome, they all support fetch for all these current versions that they have. The ones with the red, they can't. So Opera Mini doesn't know about it. Now, in the case of, let's say, IE11, IE11 has no idea what fetch is. What is the solution to that? And there's something called polyfill. So if I mdn fetch, and it gives me the documentation for fetch, at the very bottom usually, Oh, there it is. I saw it. Fetch polyfill. The word polyfill means if you are trying to support a browser that doesn't support fetch, here's the code for it so that it can. So in this case, it'll attach itself to the window global, and then you can run fetch like normal, and then it'll work. So that's what the word polyfill means. It's like, here's code. It's kind of like a hack to make your old browser think it's modern. All right. Okay, questions about assignment number 3 that I already received. How to determine if your puzzle pieces are in order. I gave you, if you looked at your HTML document, there is a property in there called data-index equals 1 for the first one, and then equals 2. You could use that. I think I said to a couple of other people to use the class box 1, box 2. You could use that, but that's why I gave you the data dash property. So you could use that because it's simpler. And so you could probably use a for loop, right? And compare the I increments to see if it matches your data dash. That's one way. Another question I received is, how come my winner bonus feature message displays before the animation completes? If your logic is correct, don't worry about it. You know, I'll give you almost all marks for that. The reason for that is you probably need a callback function. So, for example, green socks tween max animation callback. How do I execute a function after an animation has completed? And the answer is, one answer is, oh, you know what? They're using something else for that I didn't teach you, timeline max. Never mind. I thought there was a one for tween max though. Yeah, see, on complete. So you could have tween max. Okay, tween light is like a light version of tween max, but same difference. You could have tween max, and then you could say on complete, meaning to say if the animation finishes, then run this function, which is defined somewhere else. That's one way to do it. But don't stress yourself too much about that. I mean, if the logic is correct, I'm more concerned about the logic at this point, because I consider assignment 3 a hard assignment in terms of trying to build the logic and trying to build the algorithms to do the bonus features if you want to do that, which is what I'm trying to get out of you. Okay. Any other questions about assignment 3? No? Okay. I'm going to reveal assignment 4. Which is just going to add to your plate. But I promise you, this is not going to be as hard. And I think I already showed you this already. So let me reveal that right now. Make available. I am open to change the due date. Right now I have the due date to be August 7, which is, by the way, usually everything is due on a Monday. I've now changed it to a Wednesday. So August 7 is a Wednesday because I've heard from some of you that all your other courses, they tend to have your assignments due on either Sunday or Monday. So I'm going to change it to Wednesday now. All right. So this one, I think I showed you this. You're going to use this API called deck of cards to grab some JSON data that looks like this, and you're going to display the cards. So here's a sample of your. So I'm going to click on deal card, okay, which again fetches some JSON data. So every time I click on deal card, it opens up a new card. So here I have 4 cards. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select a couple. So I'm going to click. So select. So I highlighted that. Okay, great. And then I'm going to say show selected cards, which uses a dot filter. There. So it displays that. And then show discarded cards, which is the other half of that. And then if I say deal card again, it shows everything else. But whatever. You can make that do it. So that's it. Shouldn't be that hard. And I already showed you some of that stuff earlier in the first half of the semester. We'll be going over that again pretty much. But in terms of bonuses, you want to challenge yourself, you could try this. If the user refreshes the web page, use local storage to retrieve the prior hand and display that instead of having a blank screen. So local storage is one way. Think of it kind of like cookies, where you can store data on the browser. So the way it works is you can say local storage dot set item. Here's the key and here's the value, right? And then it'll be stored inside your browser, and you can always get it through saying get item, whatever. So what you could do is say .set item my hand, and then pass in JSON.stringify your hand if it's an array, that kind of thing. Another bonus is display a running total of your current hand according to blackjack rules, which can be a little challenging because in blackjack, your ace can either be 1 or 11, depending, right? And the third option is create the dealer as an opponent. Now, this can be as simple as just giving a random total for the dealer and just comparing it if you beat it, or it could be more complex. So that's why I said it's a 3+ here. It can be as simple or as complex as you want. Okay. So yeah, I'm open to changing the due date here for August 7th. And because basically all this is, it's not as complex as assignment number 3. All this is fetch JSON data, display it on the screen, using dot filter for these buttons to show your hand, and that's it. So I don't think it should be that hard. Yeah? Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Let me see here. All right, so on to today's lesson. Now, in my announcements today, I said to try to install an extension in VS Code called ESLint. So this extension is very important. It's used a lot by professionals to help them code JavaScript, especially using the modern ES6+, whatever. By the way, when I say ES6+, it means there was sort of like a naming convention war. Like some people would say it's called ES6. And then the other people will say, no, it's called ES 2015. And then the standard body came out saying it is now called ES 2015. But still people want to say ES6. But because every year JavaScript changes, the proper name is ES 2017, ES 2018, ES 2019. That's the proper name. OK, so what is ESLint? Let me show you their website. Here is ESLint. It's basically a code quality tool. So for example, they have a demo here. Where's their demo? Here it is, demo. ESLint demo. If you go to eslint.org, click on demo, click on ESLint demo. You can see how it works. So I'm going to first, actually, before we type, no, I will type. If I type in var a equals hi, you'll see all these warnings and error messages that I get that's giving me some suggestions on how to fix my code better. If you don't see this on your screen, it's probably because your rules configuration has to be set to the following. If you click on the rules configuration, make sure this drop-down menu for ECMAS version is set to 2015. Then make sure your rules down below is, when it says enable all rules here, make sure that's checked. Okay, so if you check that and make sure it's 2015, you should get these error messages here. Okay, so ESLint, you can kind of think of it like Prettier, but not really. So Prettier is more concerned with your spaces and syntax errors, but ESLint is more concerned with, like, look for example here. 1.1, unexpected var. Don't use var, use let or const instead. So it's giving you suggestions on how to make your code better so as to avoid future potential bugs. And not only that, but it has a link here according to what is no var. So let me click on that link. Here it is. And here is their philosophy behind why you should not use var and why you should rather use let or const instead. He gives you examples of what not to do, examples of what to do. And sometimes reading this gives you a better explanation of why you should follow the rule rather than go by your own, but you are free to just go by your own if you want to. So watch this. I'm going to do 1.1. I'm going to do their suggestion. I'm going to change that to let or const. That error should go away. Okay. Next, their identifier name A is too short. I should make it something, whatever. I'll say greeting. Okay, so that, I thought it would be gone, but there's another one here. Greeting is assigned a value, but it's never used. So I actually never use greeting. So I should say maybe later on console log greeting. So that error should go away, right? Then you get more. So I should use semicolons. Okay, let me get so you get the point. There's all these different rules. And there is a way to get this inside of your computer, so that you don't constantly have to go to this website all the time to check your code. So that's what what I'm going to walk you through today. I gave you a YouTube link in the announcements. I'm basically following that because in my experience, Prettier, when you install Prettier in VS Code and when you install ESLint in VS Code, they tend to fight one another, and it's very hard, I found, to make them play nicely. So I found this one link that I gave you in Blackboard, which I think is the easiest, fastest way to get it up and running, which is I'm going to recreate that now. So let's see here. So coming from this website here, this guy named Wes Boss, he created this ESLint and Prettier setup, and I'm just basically going to follow this. So the first thing to do is let's open create a new folder. Okay, so let's open up something on the desktop, I guess. Maybe on my C drive, just C drive. Doesn't matter. It should not matter where you put it. I'll just call it temp2. Okay, I'm going to open up my terminal, which is control and then the backtick to get terminal going. The first thing is to write npm init. So this is npm comes with Node. So when I asked you to install Node earlier, you get npm as well. So what does npm do? Again, just as a reminder, as soon as I write this, it's basically a command to create a new file in that folder. Let's check out that new file. There it is, package.json. Let's look at it quickly. It looks like this, which is just a configuration file in JSON format. So the next thing is to create a new file called .eslint.rc. So I'm going to create a new file here like this, and then say .eslint.rc. There it is. I'm going to type in squiggly brackets. So again, JSON format. I'm going to type in extends, and then name of the extension. Let's close that. That's good to go. So the next line is this. Let me see here. So we're going to install it. We're going to copy this line here. Let me magnify that. We're going to type in this whole line into our command line. Note that this is a local install. If you wanted to do a global install, you could replace this --dev with --global. Most developers, professional developers, from what I hear, is they do both. They have one for global and one for local, because sometimes each local project has different rules. So let's try that. I'm going to copy that. Did I copy that line? Fine. Control C. Go here, right click, and install. Or not installed, enter. And it should do something, hopefully. So it's installing all of these libraries into a folder called node modules, which you'll see in a second. There, success. So you should see something like this, success. And let's take a look at our directory now. It should be filled up with stuff. So not only do you have a package.json, but we now have a node modules directory. And inside this, if you were to ever take a look at inside there, is all of these different libraries that ESLint needs to run. When you take your next JavaScript course, you'll be learning a lot about node. Then finally is to install the extension in VS Code for ESLint. So I'm going to click on the extensions box right here and search for ESLint. And it looks like this one right here with 21 million downloads. Install that. I've already installed it in my VS Code, so I think I should be good to go. Then, final thing. Forget that. Is this one here. So we're going to, actually, no, sorry, not that one, sorry, this one here. So we're going to copy, well, I don't know if copying and pasting would be wise. We're going to just basically make sure that we have all of these different key value properties in our settings. So all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how to get to that once you install this is, for me, I say Control-Shift-P. Then I try to type in settings, and then I want to open this. The preferences, open your user settings. That will get me to here. And I think it was Tyler that showed me his VS Code, because in my VS Code, it looked totally different than his. And I think because yours was more updated than mine. So I updated mine. And now the answer is, Tyler, is you have to click these squiggly brackets. So here is where you would physically copy or paste or type in these 5 things. So make sure editor.format on save is set to true, which I already have. Make sure this one is there as well, which I also have on here. Make sure this JavaScript React, I guess that's not as important because I don't use React. And then this one here, ESLint autofix on save. Make sure that is here. Yes. And prettier disable languages, JavaScript React. Do I have that? Yeah, here it is. So as long as you have that, you're good to go. So check it out. Here's how it works. That's it. Your setup is done. So this is how it works now. So in my folder that I just created, I'm going to create a new index.js. Okay. If I save the same mistakes as last time, while this bottom left corner, something just happened. I now have these 2 errors, 1 warning. I'm going to click on this and check it out. I have these different warnings so that is how it works. If I were to save this right now, if I'm going to say Control-S to save this index.js file, watch what happens to the var. Oh, hold on. How come it didn't work? In my other folder, it changed the var into let, and then it changed, oh, there, it now worked. So it changed the var to let, and then if I say, now it's saying that, I is never reassigned, so why didn't you just use const instead? Okay, well, if I save again, Control-S, watch the let change into a const. So it fixed it for me. This is what most professional developers are using. Question you may ask yourself, okay, what if I don't like the rules? Because maybe I have different rules, and I'll show you how to modify that right now. So let's say, let's look at this rule here. Actually, let me go back to var for a second. I get this error message, unexpected var, use let or const instead. And the rule is called no-var. Here's 2 ways I'm going to show you on how to make that rule go away so it doesn't annoy you. One way is at the very top of your file, create a comment using the /* technique. And then just type in ESLint, which ESLint will automatically pick up. And then type the name of the rule that you don't like. So here in brackets, it's no dash var, so no dash var. Pull in, and then you have an option of to turn it off, which is 0. So notice here I said 0, and now it's gone, right? Or you could have 1, which means warning. So now here it is. Here's that same message, but notice it's a warning instead of, it's the yellow triangle instead of the red X. Or 2, which is red X. But this is one way to temporarily, get around the rules to stop bugging you. The other way, which is more permanent, so let me take that away, is in this ESLint RC file. So if I were to open that file, let me add a new key, JSON key property with values. So I'm going to call it rules, and then an object. And then inside this object, you can list as many rules as you want. So the first rule is called no dash var, let's turn it off 0. So that should, let me save it. Save it. There, see, it's gone. I change it to 1. Save it. There, I get it back. So those are the 2 ways on how you can change the rules if you should desire to change it. As it stands right now, the rules that's currently in place, it's using the Airbnb's policies, which everyone in the JavaScript world is using. They just use Airbnb's policy, and they just change it to their own liking. That is how to install ESLint and use ESLint to your liking. So that's any questions on that before we move on? Okay. So as I promised last week, today is going to be a lot about ES6, and also want to talk about reduce, which I was going to talk about last time. Let me show you one website which I've used a lot to help me develop what I teach here version. So this article was written in 2017, and things that this author considers what you should learn as a serious JavaScript developer. So when I read this, I said, okay, when I teach classes here, I'm going to make sure you guys try to know most of it. Okay, time willing. So let's look at their number 1. You should know the core language. So one thing about JavaScript is it can be very confusing because there's all kinds of JavaScript-based ecosystems out there, but the actual core language itself is very small. So this means you should know basic things like if else, you know that. Error handling with throw, try, catch. I didn't teach that, but I'm betting that in your other classes you have similar throw, try, catch. So JavaScript has the same thing. You should know array manipulation with push, map, reduce, filter. You know all of that except for reduce, which we'll do in a second. You should know string manipulation with replace, slice, and split. You know all that. You should know how JavaScript handles truthiness and falsiness, which you do. How to work with JSON data and JSON object methods, you do. Scope, yep. These days, it's also becoming more and more important to have familiarity with promises, modules, classes, template literals, generators, and destructuring. Okay, you don't know all of these. You will know classes. You already know template literals, and you will know destructuring by the end of today. So in number 2, you know asynchronous code. I talked about the event loop. I talked about how callbacks eventually evolved to promises, which eventually evolved to async await. You should be comfortable with at least VS Code, for example. You should be proficient with JavaScript functions, for example, how this works. So all of these here, I think I've covered most of them. So I think you're in a good place. Last couple weeks ago, I showed you those interview questions that a former student of mine. We're going to go through those today. Okay, so let's start with the first one. So the first one for ES6, which you already know, but I'm just going to explain it in detail, which is arrow functions. Okay, so arrow functions kind of work like this. Let's get set timeout. in 2 seconds, console log something. Actually, you know what I'm going to use? I'm going to use, remember that extension I taught you earlier about Quokka? I'm going to use that right now. So instead of typing it here, because I want to see the result right away instead of going to my browser, I'm going to say Control-Shift-P, Quokka, there it is, new JavaScript file. Open that up. Don't save it, just keep it like this, and then paste in your code. And then something should pop up there. See, do you see that? So the actual result printed on the screen here and here. Okay. So the way arrow functions work, it's a shorthand for the regular functions, except there are a couple of differences. Number one, you don't use the word function, so you delete that. Number two, you use the big fat arrow right there. And then after that, actually, let's even make it. Oh, hold on. No, sorry. There. So this code still does the same thing. All I did was I removed the return statement. So you don't necessarily need a return statement if and only if you just have one line of code after the big fat arrow. Also, you don't need the return statement if and only if you don't have the squiggly brackets. Here, the squiggly brackets means I'm attempting to have multiple lines. So if I had multiple lines of code, then eventually I'd have to say return hi eventually after many lines of code. So let's pretend there's many lines of code above that. Eventually I have to say return hi. Okay. The other rule is if there's more than one parameter here, so let's say I have one parameter here, you don't need the parentheses for that. But if you have more than one, then you need the parentheses. Okay. I think that's it. That's pretty much the only thing. Oh yeah, and the key difference, which I already said before, is whenever you're using arrow functions, be aware of the keyword this. Arrow functions do not have a this. It'll only inherit the this from how it was called. Okay. Whereas regular functions do have a this, which usually is attached to window. Okay. So that's the big thing. So on to the interview questions, which I said we're going to do right now. So in Blackboard, open up this Lab 11, which you'll hand in. And we'll do this together in class. And so let's download this zip file, put it somewhere on the desktop. 1073, week 10. Let's open up the HTML page. There's the HTML page, which is totally blank. That's okay. Just right-click it, view page source, and you'll see all the questions. So again, these 5 questions came from a former student of mine who did a job interview, and these were the questions that she was given in her job interview, which we will attempt to do right now. So I'm just going to copy just the first question here. I'm going to paste it into my Quokka thing here. And let's try it out. Okay. Let me just make it here. So the question is, write a function that takes a number and generates a list. When you hear a list, that means what? Array. So write a function that takes a number and generates an array from 0 to that number. Use the function to assign a value to the myNumberList variable. So here's the myNumberList variable. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to call this function by saying listMaker and some kind of number. Then this variable will contain your array of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. So if I were said listMaker 5, that variable should have an array going from 0 to 5. Let's take care of that first. Assign a value to the variable set. Yeah, forget that for now. So let's try this. I'm give you like a few minutes to try each one. This is stuff that you should be able to solve without me teaching anything. Anyone care to give me in words how they may attempt to solve that problem? Yeah. Yep. Yep. So yep. So you need some kind of loop. And how long is that array? Well, that's given to you in this parameter here. So yeah, exactly. You'll have to use the dot length. Actually, you won't necessarily have to use the dot length if you're given the length, but however you choose to do it, I want you to attempt it right now for the next few minutes, and then we'll take it up. Okay. So here, may I suggest here's my pseudocode. I would suggest this: create an empty array variable. First step is create a for loop that iterates from 0 to list length, which is given to you. And inside that for loop, push I into it. And at the end, in that array that you create. Try it. That's my pseudocode. Try it. You don't have to do it this way, but. So imagine yourself in a job interview. These are the questions you're getting right now. You don't get it? Okay, let's tackle this. So just to where we're at, I'm just going to say console log my number list, which currently says undefined by Quokka. Okay. So this should change as we code along. Here we go. So create an empty array variable. So I'm going to call it let list equals. Okay. So I could say const as well. The next one is create a for loop that iterates from 0 to that length. So let's say for let I equals 0 from as long as I is. I'm going to try this for now. Let's see if that works. Standard procedure that everyone knows. And inside that for loop, Let's try pushing I into the array. So how do I do that? What's the command? What's the one-line command for that? Then the last thing is return that array you created. So return list. Let's see what Quokka gives me. Oh, so close. I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I believe the instructions said from 0 to that number. So if I were entering 5, it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what's the fix for that? Yep, less than equals to. So that's one way. Perfect. Done. Yeah, interview question number 1 solved. Granted, that was the easiest one out of the 5. Let's try the next one. So go back to your browser where you saw the view source code. Here's where it gets interesting. So copy all this. Copy all that. Okay, so let's go back to my Quokka for a second. Delete everything. Paste in all of that. And let me just copy those comments and bring those comments to the bottom so I can remind myself what I need to do here. Okay, so you're given an array of objects, and you have to write a function that takes a list of those people and gives us back a new list. So immediately when you see that, think you're given an array, you have to give back an array, and yeah, I heard you what you're saying. Last week I said you're going to use .map and .filter, and let me just see here. Here is a reminder. I saw this tweet once, and I thought it was a good reminder. So map, filter, reduce. This is how to think of it. Map, you're given an array, and it returns an array of the same amount, the same length. Filter, you're given an array, it returns another array with lesser amount. Reduce, you're given an array, and it returns one thing. Surprisingly, that one thing doesn't have to be an array. Yeah, it'd be anything, and we'll get into that. So when the instructions say, give us a list of people with only the first names of people between the ages of 30 and 50. Okay, so let's tackle the ages of 30 to 50 first. How would you do that inside this function here? You're given this parameter called people, which again, I'm going to call it like this. I'm going to call it the function like get names for people in age range. I'm going to pass in the data, which I've called data. Yeah, called data, which is an array. So I'm going to call that. I'm going to pass in data, and let's console log the result of that. Quokka can give me an updated. Okay, it's undefined right now, which makes sense. So what is the first thing you should write? You want to use filter. Remember? So remind ourselves how to use filter. NVM filter. Here's a reminder. You're given an array. You say the name of that array dot filter, and then you give in the test condition that you want it to be true. So what's the first word that I type if I'm given this array? What's the first word that I type? I'm going to return people dot filter, and you put in what you think the test condition is. Okay, and we'll see what happens. So try that out, see what you get, and then we still have to do something after that. But take a minute and guess what should go inside this filter as your test condition. Here's the documentation again. How can you apply this to your situation? You want to find ages between 50 and 30 inclusive. 30 inclusive, 50 inclusive. What do you think? Anyone? Yeah. Say it again. What? Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So the filter, in terms of syntax, so you want to first is the some kind of variable. It could be any name there, right? So I'm going to call it person, and that person will represent each element in that array eventually. So it'll start with the first one. So now imagine after the big arrow, imagine you're working with just one element, right? And say, the test condition is I want the age to be less than equal to 50, and I want the age to be greater than or equal to 30. Okay, so now look at the output I get here. So I think I got it. It's giving me all of these people, and if you look at their ages, ages seem to fit my criteria. Okay, so that's halfway done. I got the filter right, but again, the question is asking, give me back a new list with only the first names of those people. So I just want the names returned. So how do I do that? I'm working with an array, and I have to give back an array, which I think you mentioned this. You're going to use .map, right? So fill in the rest here to just give the first name, right? So you can again use the same thing. What goes after the big fat arrow? What do you think, Suk? Yeah. The object looks like correct. Person dot first name. Okay, now look at my array that Quokka is giving me. It's giving me Joni, Lincoln, Presley, Maxine, Florence. And let's just double check that. So the first one was Joni. Let's check Joni. Joni. 42, right? And the other ones before Joni had ages that didn't fit my criteria, right? And so the next one is not Bo, Lincoln. Do I have Lincoln? Yes. Next one should be Benson. Oh, hold on, not Benson, sorry. Presley. Yes, so it seems to be working. That's your answer for that interview question, just this. Yeah, that's it. All right, let's try the next one. Next one, ooh, this one's hard. Okay, this is getting into reduce. So copy this whole thing. So you're given another array of different objects, and this is the final output that it wants. It wants you to return one object, and inside that object, it's giving you the pet name and an array of people that have that pet. Okay, so question, you're given an array and you're expected to have one thing as your output. So what are you going to use? Reduce. Remember that emoji thing, picture I showed you? So you're going to use reduce. So let me show you how to use reduce in a second. Okay, so this is where I'm going to ask you to go back to Blackboard and copy this somewhere in either on your browser browser console or maybe just get another Quokka tab going, because we're going to play with this before we answer this question. Let's get another Quokka tab, perhaps, or again, you could have it, browser. Just pasted that whole inventors array. Okay. Here's the question. How many years did all the inventors live? That's the question. Let me show you the documentation on reduce. So you're given an array. It always begins with an array. And what's interesting is that it takes two values. This one is your accumulator. Think of this as your total. And the total will always carry through to the next one. And this is, think of this as your current element in the array that you're working with right now, sort of like your person, right? So here's their example of how to add all of the numbers in an array. They just say accumulator, which begins with 0. So 0 plus, and then the current value at this time, it's 1. So what's 0 plus 1? It's 1. So that 1 gets then returned, and this, for the next element, 2, this is no longer 0. It's now 1. And the current value is now 2. 1 plus 2, 3. So that 3 gets now pushed into here, and so on. That's how it works. That's how reduce works. Let me show you how it works in this question here. One object to work with here. So how many years did all the inventors live? I'm going to basically subtract the year of their passing minus the year of their birth, which gives me the total number of years lived. And then when I do that, I'm going to add all of these years together using reduce. So here's how it works. Total years equals inventors dot reduce. And then here's where you're always using two parameters. The first one is your accumulator, which I'll call total. And then the second one is just like your regular, this is the element we're working with now, person. I could call it person, whatever. Now, because we have two parameters, I need to use two brackets around that. I'm going to use the arrow function, then my squiggly brackets, and then close it off. That's how it's going to look. There is an optional second parameter here, second argument. So you can put a comma after the squiggly bracket, and you can give it an initial value. Sort of like in your for loops, just like how you say let I equals 0. This is your like let total equals 0 in the beginning. If you don't put that there, that's okay. It'll still work. And then it's simply like this. Return. So I need to add what's been accumulated so far plus the subtraction of what the person that we're working with now. So inventor past minus inventor.year. There it is. That's the answer, 861. That's it. When I first learned about reduce, it was kind of confusing. I didn't understand all the connections and how it kind of seemed to recurse on itself. But after a while, you kind of get a feel for it, especially if you start working. Go through it again. Yeah. Okay. So what's going to happen is we're working with an array. So, and because we're working in an array, you can say dot reduce, right? Because any array you can work with dot map dot filter dot reduce. The first one represents the beginning value, which is 0 at first. So total will be 0. This will be populated with the first element in the array at the beginning. So that means we're going to think of this inventor as just this object. And basically, we're going to subtract their death and their birth to get some number, like, I don't know, 80 years old. So we're going to add 80, for example, to our running total. But the key thing is this is returned. So that total is going to insert itself into the next iteration of total. So by the time we get to this second object here, this is populated with 80, for example, if that's what it was. And this is populated with this guy, and so on. Does that make sense? I think the trick is this guy here. That's the most confusing part of all. Because you have to realize that this guy total is coming from this return statement. So whatever you say after the return, that's what total will be for the next guy in the array. That was just using simple numbers. Here's another use case where you can use return not just simple numbers, but just one object. So given an array of something, I'm just going to return one object, which is what the interview question is asking for. So let's try this. And this is where the other data comes in. If you take this here, copy that, and let's get rid of all that. Okay. And the question is, sum up the instances of each of these. So basically, it's going to look like this. At the very end, you're going to have an object where the first one will be car, and then the property will be 3, because it was listed 3 times, for example. The next one will be truck, and it'll be, and so on. That's what you want the output to be. Okay. So here's the answer for this, and this answer will relate to the interview question, which, what time is it? 2:05. Okay. Well, let's try this. Here's the answer for this. Data reduce. Hold on. Let me assign a. Data.reduce. Just console log my results right away, just to see what clock it does. And here, again, I have my accumulator, which I'm going to use obj just to represent an object. And then item will be my current element that I'm working with right now in the array. So here's the logic in English. Okay. If my object does not have the property called R right now, then let's create it and initialize its value to 0. Okay, so if my empty object, where's my empty object? Here's my empty object, comma, empty object, right? Remember before I said comma 0? This initial value can be anything. So I say empty object at first. So if my object, let's pretend this is my object. If it doesn't have this property, let's create it so that it will have this property, and let its value be 0. That's what I'm saying here. So how do I do that? One way. If our object, and remember we can use array notation to access its properties as well. So if the object, so let's imagine this item was car. So object car, does that exist? No. Therefore, let's not it. So this will be true so that the if statement will work. So therefore, whatever I write in here assumes that this property car does not exist. Let's now create it. Okay, let's create it. How to create it? Let's say just object item equals 0. That's one way, right? This is the array notation using objects. So by the end of this statement, I should now have something like R0 at the end of the statement here. So at this point, the property exists, so let's increment it. Well, at this point, whether or not it existed before or now it's just created, let's increment its values. So one way to do that is so I just increased it by 1, so that means my object kind of looks like this now. Car is 1, right? Then the key thing, which is the most confusing part about reduce, is this whole accumulator thing. How do I return what I just calculated? You have to say return and then give it what you just calculated. And look what happened. Here's the results. Quokka gave me car 5, truck 3, bike 2, walk. It correctly calculated for me. So this is my object inside results. Let's apply that back to our interview question here. Don't say that. So this is kind of like what we just did when we're returning, but instead of saying dog 2 or cats 3, you actually have an array. So you have to push the first names into it. So how do you do that? Okay, so here's how to do that. Here's my pseudocode. If pet doesn't exist, let's create it. Add first name. And that's the first thing. Inside your if statement, let's you know what? I'll just start with this one. If that doesn't exist, how do we test for that? We could say something like this. If, similar to the one before, if our accumulator, oh shoot, hold on. I want to return people.reduce. And inside that reduce, I have my accumulator and current value. Let's call this function in Quokka and see what we get here. So I want to say group console log people. And I'm going to pass them. What's it called? Data? I forget now. It's called, yeah. Undefined, that's expected. Okay. Try this out. So first one is if pet doesn't exist, let's create it. So similar to last time, if not cur.pet, right? So cur.pet is accessing the object hamster, for example, right? So if hamster does not exist in my object, it'll return false, but I not it because I want it to be true so that I can run whatever's in this if code, if block. So let's now create it, initialize it with, just like before when we had, you know, van or car 2 or car 0, car equals 0. Now we're going to say hamster equals empty array. So we're going to say cur equals an empty array. Let's add this person's first name to that array. You know how to do that. It's simply act.cur.pet, which accesses that property, .push, and then we're going to add the first name to that. And the trickiest part of all is you want to return what you just calculated. That takes care of if it doesn't exist. What about the use case of if it does exist? Then really it's just pushing in the first name. So we just copy that last line there, kind of give that, and then say return ACC, and that's it. And there it is. And here's the. Wait a minute, is that? Oh, I think I missed something. I missed my initialized object. I forgot to say comma empty object. And here's the answer. Dog has Wyatt, Diana, cat is Raphael, hamster is Joni. So basically, I know your brain is kind of frying right now. The big idea of reduce is keeping in mind that this comes from everything that you've calculated before, and you have to return it. You have to always remember to return that accumulator. So this magically becomes in here for the next guy in the array. That's really, and don't, yeah, that's really the only thing. So let's, do I want to take, yeah, I think we should take a break. Hold on, let me just see what my notes are before we take a break. Yeah, let's take a break, 2:15. So let's take a break for 20 minutes. Actually, before, do I want to do? Okay, wait. Okay, before we take a break, there's one more thing. This is easy. This is easy. There's nothing to worry about, really. This is question number 4. Let me do question number 4. So let me delete that for a second. Question number 4 is this. Here are the following code. Currently, when the code is run, 8 is the result. What changes would have to be made to get 3 instead? Okay, so let's console log this guy, console.log foo. Right now, you can see the result is 8. Why is that? Because when you call this function, there's actually 2 function bars, right? Now notice this return statement is in between of them, but in JavaScript, that doesn't matter because I already taught you that this is being hoisted, right? So it's as if this was being hoisted before that. So this bar is being is overwriting this one. So one way to get it to 3 is to just reverse it. I mean, if you want to reverse the functions, now you get 3. Right? So I think what they're trying to get at is, do you know about the concept of hoisting? That's it. So finally, before we take a break, is this final question 5 number, which we'll answer after the break. But again, it uses reduce. And so you're given this array, and inside the array are functions, arrow functions. And you're starting with 5. So 5 goes into here. 5 times 2 is 10. They want you to skip every other function. So skip this one, run this one. So now here is past 10. 10 plus 10 is 20. 20 is then passed here for the other one. 20 times 20 is 400. Skip, and then here 400 minus 1 is 399. That's the correct answer. So let's take a break. Let's take like a 25-minute break. I realized that was not nice. But we'll take this up after the break in the other classroom, and we'll go get into some nicer ES6 stuff, which I think you'll enjoy. Okay. I have some.